Peter Vundla is one of South Africa's best-known business leaders. He's also one of the country's best-known ad men, being one of the founders of the then Herdbuoys Agency that set the industry on a new path 2 decades ago. These days, you'll find him on the board of African Merchant and Investment Bank and the Mail and Guardian. And he's just written his insightful autobiography called Doing Time. In a special edition of Mags on Media this week, we sit down with Vundla and focus on his years in the ad industry. Peter Vundla, a very warm welcome to Mags on Media. Here we sit in the plush Sandton offices of a merchant bank, but I want to ask you, are you still an ad man at heart, or has that left you?
Yeah, I think once you're an ad man, it never stops. I tend to look at ads quite critically, and I'm consulted now and then to do this and that. I'm chairman of the branding committee of the University of South Africa. And so, yeah, I think deep down I'm still an ad man, no question, yeah. But it's a young man's game, and it's something I wouldn't want to get into full time right now.
A little later, we're going to talk about what you refer to as the halcyon days of 80s advertising. But you and your partners, you broke the mold with the formation of Herdbuoys. I want to ask you initially what drew you to the craft of advertising, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you say in the book Doing Time, you were told by someone, in fact, that you would never cut it in advertising. How you must be laughing.
Yes, actually, I do say it was actually at Clay Phillips, Bunton, Mandela and Blake, where I was asked to do a presentation, and they wanted a black communications manager. And after my presentation, I can't remember which one it is, whether it was Blake, Bunton, or Benson. One of those actually told me that I wouldn't cut it in advertising, and heck, that really spurred me. I knew I had to do something about this, and yeah, I mean, here we are today. So, you know, as they say, the rest is history.
The first part of that question, though, what drew you into brand communications? Was it something that had always been an interest of yours, or did you sort of stumble into it?
No, I actually stumbled into it. I mean, when I went to university, I never thought I'd be an ad man one day, but I enjoyed writing, and I entered a competition for Castle Lager at the time. And it was one of those where you needed to write a slogan. And as I say in my book, I wrote this ridiculous slogan that Castle Lager was for people with good taste and discernment, which I thought was a bit highfalutin and so on. But, you know, that won me a Packer pen as a consolation prize. I recall the first prize was a Dodge Monaco vehicle.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm sure you would have preferred the Dodge.
The Dodge, of course, yes.
Because you're a car lover, aren't you?
I actually love, I collect cars. Yeah, and so it was that I then went and worked for a market research company in between studying privately, you know, for my university degree. And I then joined Market Research Africa, which was at the time the largest research house in the country. And I was responsible for archives, and I started getting interested in consumer behavior, just looking at the research reports and that kind of thing. And so that's how my interest in advertising started, yeah.
I want to come back to the phrase that you've just used, black communications expert. In fact, I think it was the late marketing doyen, Dr. Ivan May, who said that you shouldn't be a black communications expert. I think he used the phrase a total advertising person. Did that help you recalibrate your approach to this business?
I think that's probably was the best piece of advice I got. Ivan May was actually my mentor, even if he was a few years older than me. And yes, I said, what right do I have to speak for some, I think at the time, 25 million black South Africans?
Presumptuous, yeah.
Very presumptuous. I had no mandate to speak for them. And yet again, I didn't want to be pigeonholed as a black expert. I wanted to be the total advertising person to speak, you know, across all diverse South African markets. Yeah.
Let's go to VZ or VZ advertising. The Castle Milk Stout brand, I think, was a brand that, or one of the brands that you worked on in your early days.
Indeed, yeah. That I think that was my first brand. That's how I got into advertising. Sam Mosikili, who was the brand manager at the time on Castle Milk Stout, felt that there was a need for VZ to begin to appreciate the black markets, as it was called at the time. And I subsequently coined the term main marketers, actually, because of the growing importance of the so-called black market.
Isn't it ironic that the black market hadn't been appreciated up until that point?
No,
Bizarre.
it is bizarre. I think even today, I think it's mainly to do, with how the agencies are populated, and we still don't understand the diverse South African markets. So that's how I entered the end industry then, and I was interviewed by Charles Theron, who was at the time the managing director out at President Street. And on the 1st of, I think November it was, 1991, I entered advertising, yeah.
You write that the secret of any advertising agency's success is client service. What do you think makes great client service? And it's not just something that is applicable to advertising agencies, it's applicable to any business right now, particularly in a tough economy.
Yeah, I've always believed, Jeremy, that business, like most things in life, really is about relationships. I think everything revolves around relationships, whether it's a relationship with your wife, your children, the taxman, the community, your customers, your suppliers.
Not too much the taxman.
Yeah, well, you have to have, unfortunately, that's a necessary evil. But then in client service, I always felt that you had to look after this relationship, absolutely important. And that relationship had to have integrity. And you needed to understand the client's business, even better than the client, we would say. And being the total admin also meant, as far as client service is concerned, that as we did at the time, we're not just bag carriers. We wrote strategies, we wrote promotional briefs, we wrote media plans. We were total, complete advertising people. And client service, I think, remains a critical component in terms of the relationship between the client and the agency, and not just a mere bag carrier. Yeah.
Let's follow the timeline if we can. The agency VZ then morphed into Ogilvy.
Into VZ Ogilvy,
and
yeah.
You said you were going to have a tough job. You said that you knew your mistakes would be amplified because of my blackness. It's a very honest appraisal of yourself. It's a sad appraisal in many ways that you were working in an environment like that. How did you fight that battle? How tough was that battle to fight?
Well, it was tough in the sense that, I knew I faced racial prejudice, that I wouldn't be viewed, I'd be viewed first as a black person and maybe secondarily as a professional. And I knew I had to work twice as hard as my white peers, because blackness and professionalism were not synonymous, could never be, for most of my white colleagues. And so I worked twice as hard, and I needed to make the least number of mistakes in the business, because mistakes come easy in our business, as I say in the book. So I did the least number of mistakes, and I worked hard. I worked long hours. I must say I also worked smart.
But it was also fairly difficult in many respects. So you also write, again, very honestly about toilet politics in the agency. I mean, as funny as it might sound now, it wasn't particularly amusing, was it?
Yeah, well, when you look back, it is quite amusing that, there were separate toilet facilities and some of the dynamics that happened, which I relate in my book. But that's how it was during those times. And, I was on a mission. I wanted to change things. I wanted an appreciation of black professionalism. And I knew, I think in many ways, that I was actually better than most of my white peers.
More with Peter Vundla and his book, Doing Time, when Mags on Media continues.
News that moves. ENCA.com.